How many times do I have to tell you that vintage watches have a certain value, and not only that, they're a good investment if you buy right. Today I'm going to give you multiple points of what to buy, how to buy them, and what to look for in order to keep that investment valuable down the road. That's what you're looking for. When you're buying vintage, you will have to buy with discernment, with a bit of luck, because obviously you need a bit of luck. It's not like you can go and buy it any time, and then you have to do a lot of research, okay? But everything all together comes with multiple points and multiple guidelines. So today it's going to be a bit of a guideline of how and what to buy in the vintage. So let's get it going. Today we have quite a few really good comments, and one of them just came in a few hours ago. I already responded on YouTube, but I just want to make it fair and clear that I'm not here to be making you mad. Even if I do, I'm not here to gatekeep, make you hate what I'm doing or collecting watches, any of that. I'm here to share what I've been doing for the past almost 30 years since I was a young kid, and everything in this industry has to do with knowledge, okay? I'm not withholding anything. I'm here to give you knowledge, the basics. Then you have to do your own research, and everything that you need to do is on your own. I cannot just transport all my information and all my knowledge in my head to you guys. It's impossible. It's years and years and years of experience and so on and so forth. And today, to actually talk about vintage, I have a watch that is in parts on my desk. It's not only the watch, it is a bunch of papers from Rolex. It's a Rolex. So also a bunch of paperwork and a very nice letter right here from the family of the original owner. The whole video is about something similar to this watch. We're going to talk about grail watches. We're going to talk about collecting something a bit more rare. So this is a bit of a guide that I do mentally. When you look at a watch, you always have to look at the dial, the case, the bracelet, you know, if it has box papers, overall condition, any restoration, and so on and so forth. So this is a guide for you to use and compare with a watch that basically right now is in parts. I took the time to clean it, to clean the case. Obviously it was full of gunk. The person has been wearing it for a long time. So we're gonna get to that in a few minutes, but let's look at the comments and let's dig into them right now. So I have Ryan Murphy 7422 commenting on the last video, don't fall for this in 2025. He says that I am arrogant and that I'm kind of making the distinction between real collectors and, you know, other people. I do in a certain way, not in the wrong way. Just saying that a lot of people came to the market in the past 5, 10, 15 years thinking that this is a money cow for them, okay? And I hate that. This is not just a money cow. Today the market in general is all about that scarcity, that rare factor of what you're about to buy, what you're gonna be spending your money on. And for me, something like that, I do agree that at a certain level, I despise what the market has become at a certain level, because it becomes a game of numbers, it becomes a game of transactions, okay? But behind the scenes, you gotta love that freaking watch. You gotta love what you're doing, and that's why you can buy anything you want. You can do whatever you want with your watches. You can collect anything you want. Again, you have to be aware of what you're collecting and what you're buying. And I see too many times people buying watches that, you know, they're not guided, they have no guideline, they have no linear ideas of where they're heading with the spent money, and it ends up sometimes in a very, very wrong direction, where you're gonna have watches that no one wants, where you're gonna have watches that have lost a lot of value. And again, we're talking value here in this video, so it's the whole idea of you being able to actually put your money into something that's also a bit safer, also a bit more interesting. I'm not trying to gatekeep, because people are saying I'm gatekeeping. It's not the point, okay? This whole video and all the videos I do is all about waking you guys up, telling you that I'm actually very, very open to what you have to say, that I'm very direct. All those videos are made in one shot. The whole point is me talking directly to you. It's not something I'm doing from the fact that I love filming. I'm doing it because, you know, the market is where it is, and I do have the sense of just talking to you guys in a way that I never could talk to anyone besides here in the store, and being able to do a one-on-one. Now I'm able to pass the message to tens of thousands of people in a video, which is really amazing, which is something that I cannot do in a little store in Montreal. The whole point of collecting and liking watches and whatnot, you can love watches no more than I do and not have a watch in your collection or in your possession, then that's fine, because you're collecting knowledge, which for me is more valuable than watches themselves, because it has a lot to do with the history, with where we're coming from, where we're heading. Collecting has been for me very, very interesting, because I've learned a lot, and I've curated my collection from owning, for example, 12 Speedmasters, which I was like, I own 12 Speedmasters, I'm so cool, you know, I'm whatever. And at the end, I'm like, the more you know, the more you realize, hey, I don't have one single Speedmaster that's good. I don't have anything that's really exciting from a collection point of view. I was just accumulating. So I know I've lived it. I know what it is to be in that position of, what the hell am I doing? Now I know that I want this, I know that I want that. I'm in a position where I'm lucky enough to be in contact with original owners, with people that bring me watches all the time, dealers, suppliers that do the US, that do all across Canada, and then you can find stuff that's really interesting. So I'm talking out of my heart, saying that not everyone can have, you know, very expensive watches. Not everyone can have really rare watches that you find once in a lifetime, maybe, okay? It's very, very humbling, actually, to see how many dealers out there in Europe, in the US, and everywhere that have kept watches and that have kept so many things that are extremely interesting, extremely rare, and obviously extremely valuable. We're talking, you know, most probably tens of millions of dollars in valuable watches in their personal collections. It's very interesting. You see quite a few dealers out there that have videos about those big collectors on YouTube. Very few people heard of or seen their collections or part of their collections. You have guys like Adam Menta or Eric Wind or Chrono24 making like really good videos about them. You also have quite a few vintage videos or vintage collections videos on really insane watches with Amsterdam vintage watches. And you will see that those guys have been thriving and collecting for decades, and it's coming from their families and so on and so forth. So it's not only something that was built overnight. You cannot build a crazy collection and crazy knowledge in a matter of minutes, okay? You have to do a lot of work behind the scenes to get to that level of collecting. Obviously, there's a lot of money involved in certain cases, but I'd say most of it is dedication, is the passion that drives this whole industry, okay? If those people wouldn't be around, I don't think that the generation today would make a living with watches if those people weren't not around. In general, I don't want to put anyone down. I'm not here to keep anything from you guys. The most important thing is to learn what suits you as a dealer, as a collector, as a first-time buyer, but I cannot be the one deciding for you. You have to do your own research. What I'm advocating for is basically you knowing what you're talking about, and also looking for watches that suit you, suit your wrist, suits your budget, and so on and so forth, because you're gonna be the one living with the watch all the time. All that being said, my answer on YouTube and here is not to defend anything. It's not a point. I'm trying my best to pass the message. And by the way, next week I will assess collections. I do have quite a few people that sent me their collections. That's going to be something really good to do. I have most probably 3 or 4 collections to assess, from smaller to pretty wide and pretty wild as well. And I hope you participate with me in this whole journey. It's not only me participating here. I thank you all for being on the channel. Let's get to the video. Let's get to what I found here today. I kind of pulled out 10 points about vintage watches that's important when you're collecting. So I have here a 5512 from 1962. So again, we're talking of historical importance. It's an older watch. It's also something that's historically important in the point of view of the radioactive dial, because at the time we had, you're going to see in the pictures the exclamation mark. That means that the radioactive material was lowered in the loom. What that means is that the ladies that were painting those dials, sadly, they were dying because they were basically putting their painting brushes, or let's say the brushes that they were using to paint the dials or to apply the loom, in their mouth every single time they were reapplying another dot or another letter or anything as a loom on a dial. What that did is that after 10, 15, 20 years, people would start literally having jaws that were crippled. They were losing their teeth. The whole jaw would break because it would become porous. And that's one of those watches that started it all in terms of changing the industry. This watch is very important because at that time people realized that this was happening, and it's one of the first watches that admittedly on the dial with the dot at the bottom says, hey, there's less radiation. So the significance is quite important to the industry and to the change in loom application for a lot of people back then. You have to realize a lot of people died, mostly women, because of it. And to us, it won't do any harm, even though it's still radioactive. It's pretty low compared to what previous watches would be at, and that's why a lot of dials did not survive after so much radiation being held under the crystal, with the hands being radioactive and the loom being radioactive. Here we have a dial that's nearly or almost perfect. I haven't seen one that perfect personally. So in that term also it's a survivor. The second thing, we have the history significance of the person who owned it. So I have here, I'm not going to name him, we're going to keep that private, but it was a gentleman that used to work for the RCAF, which is the Royal Canadian Air Force, and he was there for quite a long time, and at the same time he was a diver. And I have a whole letter here from his son who depicts him as an avid diver. And I have some pictures here with him showing him with his friend actively diving even during the winter. I can't stress enough of how cold it must have been to actually dive maybe 40, 50 years ago in the cold water winter in Canada. But, the passion and the love for what he was doing is right here. The historic significance of those watches also is the fact that the watch is all original. We're going to assemble the watch, take some pictures, and you're going to see how cool it is once done. Sadly, the bracelet has been kind of fiddled around with. The one thing that was not original on the whole watch was the insert was much newer. It was an MK3 insert. I'm going to replace that. I'm going to put a proper MK2 insert. So this watch is not going to be for sale. It's a personal watch. But what's cool about it is that it was never polished. It was never really touched except that insert. He refused so many times to have Rolex service the watch completely, and I do believe I have here in some of the paperwork from Rolex him refusing to actually service the watch and just replacing the bezel, which was possible back then, not anymore today, except maybe on some ceramic watches for which you can do just their ceramic bezel because it has nothing to do with the movement. All that being said, I think that covers the significance and this historic part of this watch. Second thing, which kind of is very important, is how rare the watch is. In this case, we have a watch that's a pointed crown guard. So we have little points here, like they're really pointy, that basically are protecting the crown. So when you're putting the crown in, and if you're diving, if you hit something like a rock on the side, it will not damage the crown, which would basically get water in the watch. That was the whole idea of crown guards. Obviously, Rolex has changed that. They became round, but before they were eagle beak. So eagle beak is a bit more fancy finished on the points, and you also had square crown guards. Those are I've never seen one in person. They're really rare watches. You have some Tudors and some Rolexes as well. So Rolex always did change designs. They always changed designs on the dials, designs on the cases, the movements, and so on and so forth. So what we have here is an assembly of different rare parts that belong to the watch and are all correct to the watch. First of all, we talked about how the dial is still radium but less radium. So that's still all correct. The hands are also radium. They're perfectly matching the dial. And you also have a case that was unpolished. You have pointed crown guards, and you have what we call a chapter ring, which to a lot of people might make the watch look smaller because it's basically another ring on the dial that has all the little minute track attached to it, if I can put it this way, and that makes the watch very rare and very valuable altogether. Also, what's important is all the documentation, the fact that we have the box, the fact that we have a letter, the whole pedigree of the watch is right here. Only thing we're missing is basically just the warranty papers, and we do have the skin diver handbook, and we also have the submariner manual right here, which all belong to the watch. It's all a complete set. That's what makes those watches historically important. When you have such watches, it's very attractive, it's very cool, because you only most of the time you only have the watch, you don't know who it belonged to, and so on and so forth. So in this case we have it covered. For vintage, you have craftsmanship and material. In this case, I'd say it's important. It's a point that, if you're looking into gold watches, or if you're looking into platinum watches from the era, which are super rare, it might make a huge difference. Rarity, in this case, it's stainless steel, but what's rare about it as materials and craftsmanship is the dial. It's a gilt dial. That means that basically what you see as the writing is the base plate, and they reverse etched the whole dial. So what you see is an applied black paint that's lacquered, and then the whole lume is applied to it. What that does, okay, is that a lot of the times there were defects into the lacquer. They lift, it damages the whole dial, it damages the writing, and the watch basically becomes very unusable with a very damaged dial. In this case, we're talking of a dial that's immaculate, and again, we're talking of a technique that hasn't been really used in the industry for a long time, and it becomes harder and harder to find mint dials in 1950s, 1960s, and 70s watches. There might be bracelets that are extremely rare. In this case, we have rivet bracelets. This is a 7206. It needs work, so that's also going to be something that needs to be addressed while I'm at it. I have a lot of parts for those bracelets, but they still need work and attention. The next thing that's really, really important is the brand legacy. From my perspective, I find that Rolex, obviously for what it is, has a huge brand legacy, and it has a huge impact in the whole industry. Okay, they did a lot of publicity, from movies to actors to lately you had the F1. You had so many things out there that were just screaming Rolex, Rolex, Rolex. If you go in any city that retails Rolex, you're going to see banners everywhere where that publicity is implemented. What does that do? You have that image of Rolex being really tied up with luxury for such a long time, and it's there to stay. Only thing, today they advance their technologies, they're working a bit differently. This is an era where watches were literally hand finished, which is not the case anymore today. Not to that extent anyway. They're still finishing certain things, but not to the extent that we see here, where everything was a bit different. Every single bevel is different from one watchmaker to the other, or one machinist to the other from the time. Every single dial had different lume plots depending on how each one worked. And again, you have that human touch that you don't have today anymore. The next thing that was super important to me was how the design is really resisting through time. A lot of watches have tried or inspired themselves from Rolexes. In this case, again, we go to this specific Submariner. What's cool about it is that you have a design that was very compelling for the time, and it's still looking almost the same. People tell me, hey, it hasn't changed a lot. If they don't know about watches, we know the differences. We know the differences between the 1953, 54 models to the 1960s, to the 70s, to the 80s, and we see all those differences because we're in the market of buying those all the time. But in this case, it's something that, again, because of the dial, because of the case, because of the condition, it just screams that era, which we'll never go back to. But I find that's an extremely important watch in terms of, again, design and the fact that it still is highly recognizable even today on the market. Okay, what's the most important part about vintage is that we cannot replace any of those watches with today's parts. Even though Rolex offers service dials, service hands, service inserts, service bezels, service bracelets. Okay, we don't have any riveted bracelets from Rolex anymore. All of those things put together, we can't just put a new part into a watch like that and call it a day and say, hey, look, it's all original Rolex. It's still worth the same as if it was all original from the time. Why? Because the parts are different, because the design is different, because little details make the whole difference into vintage. And originality and period correctness is what is the most important. A lot of people as well will say, hey, you're replacing the insert. I have it right here in a little thing that just came off the watch. The lume dot was the wrong one, and some people might say, hey, you know what, you're replacing it with not the original part that came on the watch. Look, an insert is easily replaceable. I have tens of them, so it's not a problem. The problem is finding them, finding good ones, original ones from the era. How I was able to acquire so many, I bought a lot of parts over the years. I also did dismantle so many watches, and obviously the most important part that I always kept is the hands, the dial, and the inserts. It's not that I'm going to use them to fabricate watches out of scratch. It's only to actually replace dials that have been replaced in the past with the incorrect ones. I've seen watches that were newer with older dials. I don't know why that would happen. I've seen watches that are older with newer dials very often. That's something that's really wrong because, again, you have certain serial numbers, certain years that bear certain types of dials, and that's very important to have the correct watch. Again, I don't suggest that. It's not something that I do. I hate doing and putting watches together. It's not something that I ever did, but it's something that comes along the way of restoration, of putting back things the way they were, and a lot of people are doing this in the industry, and it's becoming harder and harder. So that period correctness of the watch is pretty high, except that bezel, which will be replaced by me. I have that insert in my collection. What's cool about vintage as well, when we go with Rolex, when we go with Longines, when we go to Omega, except certain little things like the Speedmaster, it wasn't their movement, but a lot of those companies were making their own movements. Maybe not at the beginning. Rolex started with other people's movements. They were modifying them, signing them. At the beginning, it was pretty basic, nothing to be so excited about. I'd say Longines is really good. Universal Geneva, I bought a super great one this week with an original dial. That's fabulous. Same thing here. You have a mechanical watch that has the correct movement, the 1530 from the early 60s. Everything seems correct. It's in very good condition. I'm really happy that the gentleman refused a lot of Rolex services in the past, except again for the bezel insert, and it remained very, very original. As soon as you would send watches to Rolex, they would remove the lume, do some kind of decontamination. That's what they do in a lot of cases right now, including other brands. The Swatch Group does it. A lot of other brands are doing it, including like those big groups. LVMH might do it on some of their own older brands, and that becomes a bit of a problem when it comes to originality, and this is one of those things that you cannot run away from. If a watch is not fully original, it will lose value. All of that together is bringing me to the fact that this watch is a good investment. Let's call it this way. It is, because again, I bought it to collect. I didn't buy it to sell. Again, I'm a dealer, so I got a bit of a discount if I bought it like this from an original owner than if I would have bought it from another dealer. So the discount is not huge, but still, people still look on Chrono24, they look on eBay, they look on proven sold records on Christie's, Sotheby's, Phillips, and obviously you have to make a bid that's according to that kind of market and that reflects that kind of market of this watch. What's interesting is all the history around it, really cool, and you'll see throughout the video like different pictures of the watch. I hope you also appreciate the watch as much as I do. Only thing that I did is just polish by hand the crystal. Maybe if it bugs me, it still has some little hazing in it, so I might just replace it with a Service Tropic 19 from Rolex. So that will be the only replacement part that's newer on the watch, apart from the bezel insert that will be period correct to what this watch would have been originally. All that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is more of a, let's say, educational video, and this is the way that I collect watches. I assess every single watch in detail, from the crystal retainer to the bezel, which is the correct one with big notches. It doesn't have a lot of damage or anything, to the case that was not polished, which is super cool. And obviously we had a meeting a few weeks back with the original owner's son actually, and what I did is that I took the time to look at the dial, to look at the hands, Geiger the watch to see that the radium is still active, which should be correct to this watch. Everything matched up, the whole history, the fact that all the paperwork was there, and then all together I said I'm gonna buy it. We agreed on a price, and this is where it is right now. It's on my desk and it's gonna be worn on my wrist for quite some time. I'm really happy to do this video because today I've been driving for 7 hours to pick up the watch. I woke up at 5 a.m. It's also a pleasure because I had a few questions last week about people asking me, hey, would you share a bit of your collection? It's changing all the time as well. I also do trades like anyone else. I'm not just stuck with watches and I never sell them. It's not the case. I don't have unlimited funds. It's not the case at all. It's one of the times that I'm going to share with you what I bought. It's something that I'm proud of owning, proud of, you know, sharing with people that are also going to learn about that. And at the same time, it's educational just as much for me as it is for you, because I go through everything here and I just learn as I go about every single watch. I knew what it was when it came to me, but then you always learn little details. You always look at the case differently when you have it on hands, and you also see the craftsmanship of the time, which is also very impressive to see that there's not much that really changed from 60 years ago compared to today. Maybe a little bells and whistles, I'd say, maybe in the bezel or maybe in the way the dial is depicted to most people, as Rolex is doing right now. But in most cases, and what it is, it's a real tool watch, and that's what I'm looking for. Thank you guys for this week's support. And if you want, just subscribe, like, and comment the video. Do whatever you like. I hope that my reply was explanatory of what I'm trying to do with the channel. I'm not trying to bring anyone down. I'm trying to wake you guys up, shake you a little bit, and bring you to another level of conscience of what those watches are all about. It's not about the money. It's not so important. What's important is preserving them and leaving them for the next generation. It's not only Patek that does it, we have to do it too, okay? Take care, guys.